Hi, I'm Melanie Bunn. I'm a nurse consultant and educator with Dementia Alliance of North Carolina, and I'm glad you're joining me for this talk about is a support group for me. I was having a conversation just recently with some friends about just that word support group and what it means. And the challenge is it's not really, it has some uncomfortable connotations for some people. That you think of a support group as being somewhere where people might go and be sad and talk about their feelings and and yes, yeah, I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. That is definitely one of the things that can happen in a support group, but support groups are so much more than that. The other part of the conversation that we had was that doesn't really reflect what support groups offer. So what we're going to spend this little bit of time doing is talking about, is a support group right for you? And I'm going to start that by talking about why I believe in support groups. I've volunteered as a support group facilitator for decades with Dementia Alliance. Kind of how I got my start in the field was through a support group. And I really do believe in them. Whether they're online or whether they're in person, they make a difference. And so why do I believe in them? And I believe in them because of all the conditions and all the diseases. I think dementia is probably one of the most misunderstood. And I think it's misunderstood by people who are in partnership with someone living with dementia. I think it's misunderstood certainly by healthcare providers, a lot of the legal community, and by just community at large. So it's a misunderstood condition. So when you talk to the people in your family or the people in your faith community or the people in your neighborhood, they love you and they love the person who's living with dementia, and they want to help, but they just don't get it. And because they don't get it, the kinds of suggestions they make, the kinds of recommendations they have, they don't work. And they're kind of sometimes unhelpful is the easiest. And often they're to the point of even being disrespectful or hurtful because they don't get it. But support groups get it. Another reason why I believe in support groups is dementia is complicated. And so just the disease itself is complicated because every part of the brain is involved. There are different types of dementia. There are different people, everybody started out different. And so people living with dementia started out different. Dementia's only going to make them more different. And then the relationships are different. So the relationship between that person living with dementia and the care partner, all of those are unique. So a support group is a place where you can really focus and work through those unique situations. What are we going through? Whereas education information often is more generic than that. So support groups get it. The third reason why I believe in support groups is that care partnering with somebody living with dementia is complicated and it's misunderstood. It's there are so many different things. There are the expectations of what a spouse should do. What should a good spouse do? What would a good husband or a good wife or a good partner do? What should good children do for their parents? What should sister and brothers do for each other? And so there are all of these expectations of what should we do, and that may or may not work for your situation. There are cultural differences and expectations. In our culture, this is what we do. We would never do that. But maybe in this day and age, maybe in your situation, maybe writing that off as an option, maybe that's what we shouldn't be doing. There are also just the how-tos, just the logistics of what needs to happen in a day. So how do we organize this day from beginning to end? There are issues about how do we do things when it comes to helping with things that the person used to do independently. So that might be something like bathing or dressing, or it might be something like managing money and driving. But whatever it is, that person who used to be able to do this now needs some support to do it, or maybe even needs somebody to do it for him or her. And it gets complicated. Communication becomes a real challenge and an issue. And then you layer in my past, your past, our history between the two of us, and it just gets complicated and misunderstood. But in support groups get it. The fourth reason I believe in support groups is because of, I kind of said it's not just emotions and coping and ventilating and discuss. It's not just that, but yes, it's that. The care partnering covers the whole range of emotions, the whole spectrum of emotions, from things that are expected and supported, like I feel sad, I feel guilty, I'm grieving, things that are sad and are often supported and kind of understood, to accepted, expected, to some feelings that caregivers go through that might be judged by people who don't have experience with people living with dementia, people who don't have experience with having this change occur in that person that you're committed to and you're devoted to, who now doesn't recognize you, or who now is accusing you of spending their money, or is accusing you of stealing the car. So those kinds of emotions of being, I resent this. This is not what I signed up for. This was a second marriage. This was going to be my fun times. We were going to retire together. Or this was my first marriage. We struggled and we put our kids through college and we put everything on the back burner. And now, all we've got is back burner. We don't have anything. We can't travel. We can't. And so that frustration, that resentment, that irritableness, those are feelings that often people in the community who aren't real specialists in dementia, who don't really specialists either in personal experience or specialists because they've listened enough, they've learned some stuff like me. We get it. Support groups get it. But often in the community, those kinds of things aren't understood, and they aren't accepted, and they aren't embraced and supported. And in a support group, they get it. They get why you feel like, my dad was always mean. I don't know why I have to put my life on hold for him now. Or my mom was an alcoholic. Why should I be taking time away from my children, to take care of this woman? But I feel like I ought to, but I don't want to, but I should, I shouldn't. These complicated kinds of issues support groups get, that they're multiple experiences and responses and emotions connected to the same time, and they're not sequential. It's not like we start here and we go here and we go here and here. It's not a process that you work through. It really is different relationships and different moments in the time. And one minute someone may say something and I may think it's funny, and another time somebody says it and I'm very offended by it. We're human beings. So to be with people who get it and support groups get it can help you survive this really complicated life. Why I believe in support groups? I believe in support groups because I think that support groups are one of the best places to go to for resources. When I'm looking for someone to help me with a challenge, if it was anything from looking for summer camp for my son to looking for a financial advisor, to looking for the best place to go and get your driver's, to looking for all of those things. I go to people I like and trust, but that's not enough. I also want that person to have some real on the ground experience with that organization or with that system. So I want people who have been in a similar situation for me. So I don't want to talk to somebody who has a $50,000 car if I've got a $10,000 car about where I should get my car worked on. I need somebody who kind of has more in common with me than different. So support groups are places where, we've used home health for people living with dementia in our family, or, we looking for this and this is where we found it, or this neurologist who may be really, really good at working with people who have MS might not be really, really good with people with dementia. So we kind of tease through those things and figure them out with people who have real experience. So support groups get resources and referrals. So going back to the real question, is a support group for me? And the answer is, I wrote when I was kind of outlining my thoughts about this, I wrote maybe, and I think I actually am going to come out a little stronger than that and say probably. Because if you have questions about dementia that are beyond just generic, that are really, why is my person doing this? Support groups might be for you. If you feel like those people in your life love you and want to help but don't get it, then a support group might be for you. If you're looking for resources in your community from people who have used this particular specific organization, support groups might be for you. So what could you really expect? Answers to questions about dementia itself, answers to questions about what did this mean to you? Because sometimes I especially, and I bet many of you as well, I learn really well through hearing other people's stories. So if you just tell me do this, okay, whatever. But if you tell me your story, I find some meaning in that. So hearing other people's stories, questions about how to do stuff like bathing and dressing and brushing teeth and eating, how to manage issues like the car, manage issues like this place you're living isn't working. How do we find a different place, and what is that different place? And then how do we get you to that place? How do I get my mom to go see the doctor? How do I do it kinds of questions. What do I say questions? What do I say to my children when they ask about grandma? What do I say to my parents' neighbors? What do I say to our neighbors about what's going on? Those kinds of communication kinds of questions. And then all of those complicated things about how do I manage the day? What do I do first and what do I do next? How do I make this really work? So it's information about answering those questions. It's all of those feelings. And we kind of talked about, the ones that are kind of expected and accepted, and the ones that are often more complicated for people to understand. Another piece of that is sometimes it's easier to talk through something with someone who's not as invested. So sometimes if I maybe talk to my brother and sister about something, they're part of it. They're in the middle of it. They have their own relationships and opinions. Maybe if I talk to somebody else's brother and sister, it might be a little easier. Or maybe if I talk with someone, I don't want to talk with my mom because I don't want, her burden is already enough. I want to talk to somebody who has a different burden, or I don't want to add more burden. So that idea of emotions and feelings in a safe place. So what can you, and resources that are tried and true, unique to your community, tested. We actually have at Dementia Alliance a navigator, and who's one of the smartest people, Dee Harris, who knows so much, and she is my go-to when I'm looking for resources. But even someone whose job is to navigate dementia reaches out to support groups for information and reaches out to support groups for some of those resources that are tried and true in that specific community. So what should you expect from a support group? Well, you should expect people who come at this from different reasons. They might be families, they might be other kinds of care partners, they might be friends, they might be people from faith community or neighborhood, people who get it, who are somewhere on this journey with you or on their own journey that's parallel to yours. You should expect at least one, maybe two co-facilitators, or a facilitator and maybe a co-facilitator. Now, we need to be really clear. We do support groups, not therapy group or therapy sessions or counseling sessions. These are support groups. These are places where people go to talk about, to learn, to get resources. Some people need more than that, and so that's part of the role of that facilitator, is kind of to identify if this is a situation where we need more resources, how do we connect the person in their environment to make that work for them? It's a place where you talk about feelings and you get, but you also give support because you're uniquely positioned to be able to understand somebody else's journey because of where you are on your journey. And to figure out, how did you cope with that? What were the strategies you used to get through it for yourself as a human being? And the goal is to make life better for people living with dementia and for their care partners. So that's what support groups are about. A couple of things you should know. Support groups are confidential places to talk. So in my group, I say what we talk about here stays here. That doesn't mean resources or information. That means people's stories are their own to share. And so I'm not going to share anybody else's story. I'm not going to tell anybody what's going on in somebody else's life, even within faith communities, even within care communities, even within neighborhoods. You talk about your own stuff, you don't talk about anybody else's, and you don't talk about it outside of the support group. So there's that piece of confidentiality. You should expect to be in an inclusive and non-judgmental environment. In my support group, my first rule is confidentiality. My second rule is you've got to be nice to each other. Now, don't let that scare you off. The idea that I have to tell people to be nice to each other, that's not what it really means. What it means is that we believe, accept, and value that people are doing the best they can. And so what might work for one person might not be something that's okay or acceptable for somebody else. What might be one person's decision might be something somebody else might choose not to do that way. But we accept that people are doing the best they can in an inclusive, non-judgmental way. The other thing that's important about support groups is they're not a place for marketing or sales opportunity. So support groups should be about you and what you need. And if there is a program, the program is there to provide information, to provide resources. Take it, don't take it, follow up, don't follow up. It's a resource, it's not an expectation. So what we're looking for is if we put people in a situation where they've got information and they've got support and they've got resources, and not just generic information, generic support, generic resources, but really specific and pertinent information, support, and resources, then we're setting ourselves up and our communities up and the participants in our support groups up for healthy care partnering. And that's what we're looking for, because the healthier that care partner is, the healthier the relationship is, the healthier the life of the person living with dementia is going to be. So I want to thank you for joining me. I hope some of you will be reaching out to Dementia Alliance of North Carolina to join some of our support groups. Reach out. They're on the website. There are a list of support groups listed by county. Reach out. There are online groups that are open to anybody. reach out. If you're having trouble deciding what and when and how, reach out to the Dementia Navigator for some specifics and some guidance and what might work for you. But reach out, because it's too hard to go through it alone. I want to thank Dementia Alliance of North Carolina for sponsoring this webinar, and I hope you'll get some help, some joy, some information, some support, and some resources from it. I look forward to seeing you on other webinars.